At its peak, it was the largest city on Earth. Not Rome, not Constantinople, not medieval London or Paris. None of them came close. Angkor, the capital of the Khmer Empire in what is now northern Cambodia. A city of 1 million people, built in the jungle, sustained by a water engineering system so sophisticated that it had no equal anywhere in the ancient world. And then it was gone. Not conquered, not burned to the ground, not buried by a volcano. Simply abandoned, left to the jungle, left to the roots and the silence and the slow, patient work of centuries of vines pulling the stone apart. The question that has haunted archaeologists for generations is not just what happened to Angkor. It is how a civilization that brilliant, that powerful, that technically advanced could fall apart so completely that its people walked away and never came back. The answer is one of the most important warnings in all of human history. To understand the fall, you first have to understand what was built. The Khmer Empire rose to dominance in the 9th century CE and reached its height between the 11th and 13th centuries. At its center was Angkor, a city that covered over 1,000 square kilometers of engineered landscape. The temples you have seen in photographs, Angkor Wat, the Bayon, the jungle-consumed towers of Ta Prohm, those are only the ceremonial core. The actual city stretched in every direction. Residential districts, markets, roads, and above everything else, the system that made all of it possible. Water. The Khmer were not just builders. They were water kings. In a region where the monsoon brings months of flood followed by months of searing drought, the Khmer built something extraordinary. The brilliance system. Massive rectangular reservoirs, some of them 8 kilometers long, constructed to capture monsoon rainfall and release it steadily through an intricate network of canals and moats during the dry season. The West Beret alone holds enough water to fill 60,000 Olympic swimming pools. It was not natural. Every cubic meter of it was moved by human hands. This hydraulic system allowed Angkor to grow rice 3 times a year, something no other civilization in Southeast Asia could match. The surplus fed the workers who built the temples, the soldiers who expanded the empire, and the 1 million people who made Angkor the most populous city on Earth. It was, in every sense, a marvel. And it contained, hidden inside its brilliance, the mechanism of its own destruction. Here is the trap that the Khmer walked into. Slowly, across centuries, one canal at a time. As Angkor grew, the hydraulic system grew with it. More canals, more reservoirs, more connections between waterways, more checkpoints, more sluice gates, more channels threading through an increasingly dense urban landscape. Each addition made sense individually. Each new canal fed a new district. Each new reservoir supported a new expansion. The system worked, brilliantly, reliably, for generations. But systems that grow without limit eventually become something dangerous. They become too interconnected to change. By the 13th century, the hydraulic network of Angkor was so complex, so tightly interwoven with every aspect of the city's life, that no single part could be modified without affecting dozens of others. A blocked canal upstream caused flooding downstream. A change in water flow to one district starved another. The system had become what modern engineers call brittle, not weak, but inflexible, incapable of adapting. At the same time, something was happening in the landscape around the city that no one was tracking carefully enough. The forests were disappearing. Angkor needed wood, enormous quantities of it, for cooking, for construction, for the kilns that fired the bricks, for the scaffolding that built the temples. Across the centuries, the forests surrounding the city were cleared at a scale that fundamentally changed the hydrology of the region. Without tree cover, topsoil washed away. Without topsoil, the land could not hold water the way it once had. Without that natural water retention, the silt load in the rivers and canals increased dramatically. And silt is the silent killer of hydraulic systems. Slowly, steadily, invisibly, the canals were filling up. The reservoirs were shallowing. The precision-engineered channels that controlled the flow of water through a million-person city were becoming clogged with the eroded earth of a deforested landscape. The greatest city on Earth was quietly choking on its own success. Then the sky turned hostile. In recent years, and significantly, in climate modeling published as recently as 2026, researchers analyzing tree ring data from ancient trees across Southeast Asia have confirmed something that changes the entire story of Angkor's collapse. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the region experienced a series of severe, prolonged mega-droughts. Not one bad dry season, not two. Decades of below-normal rainfall, stretching across generations, slowly draining the reservoirs that the Khmer had built to last forever. The berets, those magnificent 8-kilometer-long monuments to human engineering, began to run low. The rice paddies that depended on them produced less. The surplus that had fed the empire began to shrink. And then, as if the drought alone were not enough, the monsoons came back, but wrong. Not the steady, reliable rainfall the system had been designed to manage. Intense, erratic, violent rainfall that overwhelmed the silt-filled, aging, inflexible canals. Water that should have been captured and stored instead poured through broken levees and flooded districts that had never flooded before. The hydraulic system did not gradually decline. It catastrophically failed. Picture this. The king of Angkor was not merely a political ruler. He was a god king, a divine figure whose sacred role was to guarantee the relationship between heaven and earth, between the rains and the people. The entire imperial cult was built on the promise that the Khmer king controlled the waters. And now the waters were killing the rice. The people were hungry. And the divine guarantee was exposed for everyone who was starving as a lie. The faith that had sustained the empire for 500 years began, quietly and irreversibly, to dissolve. Here is where the popular myth breaks apart. Most people, when they hear about Angkor's abandonment, imagine something dramatic. A sudden invasion, a catastrophic battle, a city swallowed overnight by the jungle. None of that is what happened. The abandonment of Angkor was a migration, slow, strategic, generational. As the hydraulic system failed and the food supply declined, the elite of the Khmer Empire began to look south, toward the Mekong River, toward the coast, toward the maritime trade routes that were becoming, in the 14th and 15th centuries, the new source of wealth in Southeast Asia. The inland hydraulic empire was a product of a specific era, an era when controlling rice production was the path to power. That era was ending. A new era of coastal trade, of maritime commerce, of connections to China and India and the Islamic world was beginning. The capital didn't collapse. It relocated. Phnom Penh, today's capital of Cambodia, grew as Angkor declined, a conscious choice by the Khmer elite to abandon an infrastructure they could no longer sustain in favor of an economy they could. Then, in 1431, the Ayutthayan army from what is now Thailand invaded Angkor and sacked the city. This is the moment most history books point to as the fall of Angkor. And it was real, violent, destructive, traumatic. But by 1431, Angkor was already half empty. The population had been bleeding southward for decades. The temples were already beginning to be reclaimed by the forest. The invasion did not kill Angkor. It buried what was already dying. The jungle finished the work. Within a century of the final abandonment, the forests had moved back across the city. Roots split the stone. Vines pulled at the carvings. The carefully engineered canal system, no longer maintained, silted over completely and became indistinguishable from the natural landscape around it. A civilization that had housed 1 million people, that had engineered one of the most sophisticated water management systems in human history, that had covered 1,000 square kilometers with monuments that still stand today, vanished from the surface of the earth so completely that when French explorer Henri Mouhot encountered Angkor Wat in 1860, the local Cambodian villagers told him the temple had not been built by humans. It had, they said, been built by the gods. Because nothing human could have made something that large, that detailed, that permanent. They had forgotten. 5 centuries of jungle had been enough to erase the memory of 1 million people from the collective knowledge of the descendants who lived in the shadow of the stones their ancestors had built. Stand in Angkor today and you feel it. The heat, the silence, the roots of the strangler figs growing through the faces of stone gods, patient and unstoppable, doing in centuries what no army could do in decades. The berets are still there. The Great West Beret still holds water, used today for irrigation and fishing by the Cambodian villages around it. The canals are invisible, buried under forest floor and rice paddies, traceable only by satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar. And the temples stand, not because they were built to last, though they were, but because the jungle, paradoxically, protected them. The same roots that split the stones also held them in place. The same vines that obscured the carvings also shielded them from erosion. Nature dismantled the city, and nature preserved the monuments. It is the most precise possible illustration of the lesson Angkor offers. Build with nature's rhythms, and you can sustain 1 million people. Build against them, or fail to adapt when those rhythms change, and the jungle will take back everything you built in less time than it took you to build it. The Khmer did not fail because they were primitive. They did not fail because they lacked intelligence or ambition or technical skill. They failed because their system became too large, too rigid, and too dependent on conditions it could no longer control. In 2026, as water management crises unfold across Asia, Africa, and the American West, as cities built around specific assumptions about rainfall and river flow face decades of disrupted climate, the story of Angkor is not a historical curiosity. It is a mirror. The complexity trap that consumed the Khmer Empire is not a thing of the past. It is the thing that every large, successful, infrastructure-dependent civilization builds for itself, one canal at a time, one convenient assumption at a time, until the system is too interconnected to change and too fragile to survive the moment when the sky stops cooperating. Angkor is the most detailed warning in stone that the world has ever produced. We just have to be willing to read it. If this story made the jungle feel a little closer, if it made your own city's infrastructure feel a little less permanent, share it. Because some warnings only work if enough people hear them. Subscribe. Because history is not the past, it is the pattern.